introduced by the Britishers for the more earnings, to earn more profits and export of such goods to European countries. Export of such goods towards the European countries. Am I audible? So the European countries. So commercial crops were often cultivated at the cost of the food crops, such as the rice and wheat. The planters usually took recourse to fraudulent contracts and oppression, thereby forcing the peasants to cultivate the cash crops. Cultivate the cash crops, which includes as indigo, opium, tea, and coffee. Indigo, opium, tea, and coffee. They force the farmers for the production of such crops. So the first reason, impact of commercialization of agriculture. First, farmers, it became poorer. Due to the introduction of a commercialization of agriculture, it directly benefited to the Britishers, not in concern of Indians. So Indian farmers, they became as a more poorer. Farmers, peasants, they became as the poorer. Second, farmers became more poorer. Second, planters and company exploited farmers through increase in revenue. Third point, commercialization of agriculture, it increased corruption among company officials. Corruption, so those officials which earlier earned as a lesser, those who earned lesser earlier, now they started to earn as a more, which resulted as a corruption among the officials. This increase in income by the cash crops not benefited to the others, not benefited to the company. Company officials use such money for themselves. Yes, Jayant?
सर आपने पिछले लेक्चर में कुछ और पॉइंट्स लिखवाए थे 3.
Which of these?
It benefited Britishers, industries, and traders. Company started exploiting farmers. It increased number of exports as compared to imports.
Okay, thank you. Continue. Farmers lose their agricultural fields. Farmers lose their agricultural fields due to heavy burden of loans. Heavy burden of loans, etc. Since these were sold in international markets, their demand fluctuated widely, and while in the areas of a good harvest, it benefited the peasants to some extent in the seasons of a poor harvest. The peasants were very badly. They were suffered with the very badly. Now the next one is the indigo cultivation. Cultivation of indigo. Indigo cultivation. For the production of indigo, there were the two systems were prominent in a British age. Two systems of indigo production were prominent in British age. These were Nij system, N-I-J, Nij system, and the Ryoti system. Ryoti system, R-Y-O-T-I, Ryoti system. Nij system and Ryoti system. Clear, Manasvi? Put it your hand down. Yes, Manasvi.
Sir, what was the second point of impact of commercial?
Farmers became as the poorer. Farmers became poorer. They lose their agricultural fields. Farmers lose their agricultural fields. Clear? Yes, Pragati. Planters produce indigo on lands that they directly control. Means they produce indigo in such number of lands which they owned as personally. Owned personally. So either the planters bought the land or rented it from others, and hired laborers were appointed to produce the indigo. But soon they faced a number of problems. Planters faced a number of problems, such as indigo could be cultivated on the fertile lands, and these lands were already very densely populated. Basically, as a highly fertile lands used for a cultivation of a food crops, and generally the such food crops produced in areas of a densely populated areas. Densely populated where the more population living in a agriculture fields or in near to the cities. Those number of cities where the more number of people living in a per square kilometer area. In such number of the lands, the high fertile soils were available, and such high fertile soils used for the cultivation of a wheat and rice, cultivation of a food crops. Yes, Rhythm.
सर आप फिर से रिपीट कर दोगे निच कल्टीवेशन ऑफ
Which one? Again, raise your hand. Rhythm. Yes, Rhythm.
सर आप फिर से रिपीट कर दोगे निच कल्टीवेशन ऑफ इंडिगो
Nij system of indigo. Under this system, planters produce indigo. Planters produce indigo on lands that they directly controlled. On that particular land that they directly controlled, or means they owned their own land. It used for a cultivation of indigo. But some number of planters, they rented a land from others, hired the paid laborer for production of indigo. For production of indigo. Clear? So what were the problems associated with the niche system? Problems associated with the niche system. Indigo could be cultivated only on a fertile lands, and these lands were basically used for the densely populated areas. In densely populated areas, basically as a production of a food crop, such land use. So this was as a problem, shortage of land. Land it was not available for a cultivation of indigo. Second one, they could not hire the labor to work on indigo plantation, as the peasants were busy in cultivating the rice in their agriculture fields. So the shortage or deficiency of, or a shortage of laborers, not favorable for a production of indigo. Not favorable for the production of indigo, because the workforce and the peasants use laborers for the cultivation of a rice in a central India. Cultivation of rice in central India. Third one, they found it difficult to arrange for plows and bullocks, as peasants required these to work on their own fields. So they face as the severe scarcity of bullock carts. They face the severe scarcity of plough and bullocks as peasants required them to work in agricultural fields. Work in agricultural fields. At that time, tractors were not introduced in Indian society. Tractors were not introduced, and most number of agriculture practices done through the animals. So such animals used for the production of food crops. Production of food crops. Clear, Manasvi? Listen first. First listen. Production of food crops. So such animals which already engaged in a production of a food crops, not possible to use for a indigo production. So these were the problems. First problem, the fertile lands basically occupied for the production of a food crops, which basically used by the densely populated areas. Second one, the laborers, scarcity of laborers, deficiency of laborers resulted due to the use of laborers in a production of a rice by the peasants. And third one, they found it as the difficult to arrange the ploughs and bullocks as peasants required them in a production of a food crops. So the planters failed to bring large areas of land under the cultivation of indigo. The failure of the Nij system led to the replacement by the another method or a system which came to be known as the Rayoti system. R-Y-O-T-I, Rayoti system. Under the Rayoti system, a contract was signed between the Rayots means farmers, Rayots and the planters. The Rayots were under the Rayoti system, contract signed in between of Rayots and planters and planters. The Rayots were given loans and forced to grow only indigo on at least 25% of their agriculture fields. Rayots, they borrowed the loans. Rayots borrowed loans and signed a contract in which they bound to produce 25% of agriculture fields under indigo. At least 25% of their total land mass used for the cultivation of indigo. It was ASRA bound, and after the production, Rayots bound to sell it to the planters. After the production, the planters informed the peasants that the loans could be repaid only in supplying of indigo, not as a money. The amount of a loan which borrowed by the Rayots or a farmers from planters, it repay in a form of a supply of indigo, neither as the money. They demanded as the supply of indigo directly to the planters, means peasants, they or Rayots, they can't sell their indigo to the any other company. They were bound by the planters, and planters, they fix the price of the indigo as per their own. They set the prices of the indigo as per their own on such price that such amount of indigo production, it repaid to the planters by the Rayots. So soon later, this system also resulted a number of problems, such as peasants growing indigo on their fields, peasants growing peasants growing indigo on their fields received a very low price for the indigo, very low price for the indigo. They were not able to pay back the loan, which led them into the clutches of moneylenders. I'm repeating again, the peasants growing indigo on their agricultural fields received very low price of their production, very low price of their production of indigo. So they were not able to pay back, the loan, which led them from moneylenders for production, Clear? So the such farmers which already borrowed the loans from the moneylenders, due to the low price of indigo set by the planters, they were unable to repay the amount of a loan as completely. And what solution they opted? They sold some part of their agricultural fields for the repayment of loans. Farmers bound to take a loan. After borrowed a loan, they use for a cultivation of an indigo. After the production of an indigo, it will be as selling at the low price. Means farmers not benefited with the indigo as the exported towards the European countries. Their prices are as the low, then they unable to repay the amount of a loan whatever they borrowed earlier from the moneylenders. That condition named as a debt trap. DEBT-TRAP. If under such circumstances, farmer it will borrow the loan from the other source, or either it will sell the sum of their agriculture field for the repayment of loan. Loan तो वापस करना है. Either it will borrowed, कहीं और से लोन लेकर वो first money lender को देगा, or either it will try to sell the sum of their agriculture fields to repay the amount of loan. That situation is known as a debt trap. Trap means second source, wherever through which the farmer borrowed a loan, then it will be as a move towards a third source for the loan and paid to the second source. It means as a trap, the cycle of a loans, it will be as a continuous work throughout their life. Clear? This was as the first problem. Second problem, after growing indigo, the same land could not be produce other crop. Means land loses their fertility. That land already exhausted their fertility. It can't use for the further production. It can't use for the further production. Clear? Third, the planters also took risks. The planters also took actions against of the peasants if they refuse to follow their orders. Orders in the sense of a production. Planters also took actions against such farmers who refuse to follow orders of planters. Which order? That order in which after the production of indigo, the material, after the production of indigo, it will directly sell it to the planters. So those number of the farmers, peasants, which refuse to follow the orders of planters, orders of planters, refused to follow the orders of planters. These were beaten, up, kidnapped, and fined by the planters, who maintained armed grooms, named as a lathials, Lathials, Lathials. Lathials, Lathials. Lathials. Clear? Lathials. Next one. Next. Blue Rebellion, Indigo Revolt or Blue Rebellion in 1859 to 60. 1859 to 60. 1859 to 60. In 1859, riots in Bengal refused to grow the indigo. And why does they reluctant, and why did the farmers they refuse to indigo? Because after the production of indigo, land loses their fertility. That's why the farmers in Bengal in 1859 they refused to produce indigo. So at some places they even attacked the indigo factories and socially boycotted those peasants who worked for the planters. Even the zamindars went around the village urging the riots to resist the planters. Women also revolted. Gomastas are the agents of planters. Gomastas are the agents of planters. Gomastas are the agents of planters. Who collected rent were beaten up. The riots even refused to take advances to start sowing of indigo in September 1860. In September 1860, the peasants refused to grow indigo under any pressure. The revolt started from a small village, Gobindapur. Note it down. Revolt. It was started at the place of Gobindapur of Bengal. Gobindapur of Bengal in 1859, which led by the Digambar and Bishambar Biswas. Digambar and Bishambar Biswas. Bishambar Biswas. These were the ex-employees of planters. It soon spread to all districts of Bengal, the peasants became as wise and started using the law courts to enforce their rights. They often got together and filed cases against the planters. Ultimately, the planters could not withstand the collective might of the peasants and began shutting down the factories. One of the important aspects of the Indigo Revolt in Bengal was that it enjoyed the support of the intellectual class and other groups as well. In the rural areas, rebels were supported by their local zamindars. In the urban areas, the educated middle class supported the movement. In Bengal, the British government was forced to appoint the Indigo Commission to review the corrupt practices relating to this system. The commission held the planters guilty and criticized them for the wrong methods they used. Thus, the indigo production came to an end in Bengal. Gradually, it moved to the Bihar also. There too, the several revolts took place, in which one of them as the Champaran revolt. In Champaran, workers at the indigo plantation revolted in the indigo plantation. They revolted in 1867 to the 68 after a gap of around 5 decades. In 1917, noting down, in 1917, Mahatma Gandhi, in 1917, wait a minute. Yes, in 1917, Mahatma Gandhi took up the cause of the indigo cultivators against the local planters. The final blow to indigo cultivation came when a cheaper synthetic dye was invented in the 19th century. Cheaper synthetic dye invented in the 19th century. Mahatma Gandhi, when it returned back to India in 1915, in 1915, Gandhiji returned back to India from South Africa. Then he observed the situation. Then it started as their first satyagraha as against of the indigo planters. Clear? So this was our chapter, ruling countryside. Any questions? Britishers, they states that they initiated the number of crops like opium, indigo, tea and coffee in India, which were high demanded in European countries. Its impact on India as the first those number of the farmers which produce as the cash crops or commercial crops, such crops which use for the earning of the profits. So such number of crops required as more agricultural inputs, and such agricultural inputs complete by the farmers by borrowed the loan from the money lenders. Clear? Then they caught under the cycle of a debt trap. Second is the such number of cash crops they purchased by the company at a low cost from farmers and sold at the high rates to the other European countries. Means profits used by the company for their own, not by the farmers. Clear? Third, with the production of a cash crops like as indigo, land loses their fertility. So such kind of lands which were not capable for a production of other types of food crops, it these were the responsible for the deficiency of or the decreasing the supply of the materials to the society. Supply of materials to society. Fourth one, commercialization of agriculture increased the wealth of company. Increased the wealth of company. But complete of such profits which earned through the selling of cash crops, these were not directly benefited to the company. Company officials, corrupt company officials, they use such money for their own beneficial. Clear? Impact of commercialization. Japji, yes. Yes, Japji.
Sir, what is the Latias?
Repeat.
Sir, what is Latias?
Lathials, Lathial.
Yes.
Lathias, these were the persons, those persons which were appointed by the planters to recover the amount of a loan in a form of a indigo. After the production, if the farmers refuse to pay amount of a loan in a form of a indigo, such number of Lathials were appointed to collect indigo directly from the farmers forcefully. Clear? Lathials, Lathials. Lathials. It has given on Lathials given on page number this one, which has appears on your screen. Lathials. Clear, Japji? Showing on your screen in a part of a blue rebellion. Second last line. Lathials, the lathi wielding strongman maintained by the planters for collection of indigo from peasants. Clear? So this much for today.